Did you know that like these evergreen trees, like the Jew tree, were sacred to our ancestors? I read that and I started thinking about that, a lot. In this video, I want to talk about specifically the Jew tree and why that's so sacred. In Dutch it's called the taxusboom. In Latin it's called the taxus officinales. I want to talk about why specifically that's sacred and why we might not even have the sacred runes if it wasn't for that tree. I got a feeling Odin's getting mad at me just for saying that, because it was of course not the tree, it was Odin. But maybe the tree that Odin sacrificed himself to was a Jew tree. But I'll explain that in the second part of this video. For now I want to focus on not only Jew trees but other trees which fall in the category of these evergreen trees. These trees that don't lose their leaves in winter. These pine trees. You know, we still have the tradition of bringing a pine tree in our house at Christmas. Why do we do that? Well, it's an old pagan belief that the spirits of the forest were given like a nice place to stay during the coldest days of the winter. So we know kind of where it came from, but why specifically do we take those evergreens and why are they so sacred? So I started thinking, a tree that stays green in winter, what's the symbolism? What does winter represent? So you may or may not know, you may or may not experience this the way that I experienced it, but for me winter is not just something outside of ourselves. Nature is not something outside of ourselves. We are part of nature. Nature's part of us. It lives here. So I see seasons like seasons, but also differently. Like when you meet a new love and you fall in love and you get a new job. Your life is in spring. When you marry that person, you get kids. And you may get a promotion at your job. Your life is in summer. But 5 years later, your wife might leave you. Something terrible might happen to the children and you lose your job. Then, my friends, your life is in winter. I get a feeling that some people are in winter for many, many years. Not the winter outside of ourselves, but the winter inside of ourselves. Now, normally in winter, everything loses their leaves and everything looks like it's dead. And I think that metaphor holds up. Because when you go through all these terrible things and you look around you, everything looks dead. But these evergreen trees, they do something remarkable. Even though everything around them is dying, they don't lose their beauty. Do you know how rare that is? If you translate that metaphor to humanity, say that you lose your job, lose your relationship, your children get sick and you lose your job, and somehow you don't lose that sparkle in your eye. I think maybe we take these evergreens into our house to decorate our house with jewel. Maybe we do it to remind us that doesn't matter how crazy life gets or how cold it gets. We should be like those trees. We should never lose our shine. So maybe that's why we do it. Now, to talk about that famous myth, possibly the most famous myth, of how we got the runes, how Odin got the runes. It's always believed that the tree that Odin hung himself on, the world tree, was an ash tree. Translate in Dutch to an elmboom. But if you read the Eddas, there's a term describing the world tree, and I don't know what it sounded like in Old Norse, but it translates to the tree that is forever green. And an ash tree loses its leaves in winter. So that begs the question, what tree is it? I think it's a It's a Jew tree. It's a taxus boom. And to be perfectly honest, it wasn't my idea. It was actually an idea by a friend of mine, a pagan called Ben. Hello Ben, if you're watching, you probably are. You gave me this idea because this guy is learning all about trees. He's learning how to cut trees, how to take care of trees, how to take the trees down. So he's constantly learning. And he came across some evidence which strongly supports the claim that Yggdrasil could be a Jew tree. Now, hang on to your hats while I hang on to mine. And here we go. We have the first evidence, which suggests like, well, yeah, it's forever green, and you know, a Jew tree is forever green, so it could be that. It's also a tree that's very native to Europe, so that helps with the story. If the tree doesn't exist in Europe, it's unlikely, but it's native to Europe. And it's one of those trees that gets really, really old. It gets up to 2,000 years old. Now imagine, let's say, living 2,000 years ago, and you had a tree that was 1,500 years, 1,800 years old. I think I would write a myth about that tree. I think people would do that. I think you would imagine the roots going down to Mimir's well, and you would imagine like the branches going up to Asgard. That would be one sacred tree. But there's one final piece of evidence that Ben found out. It looks like that when at the height of summer, when it's really warm, the taxus officinales, the Jew tree, exudes a kind of air, a kind of mild toxin. In Dutch we say a walm. Don't know how you translate that. But there's just this a scent. And this scent is said to have mild hallucinogenic properties. So let's say you go on this shamanic journey, you go on this journey, and you say, I'm gonna sacrifice myself to myself. You make it this sacred thing. No food, no drinks, 9 days, 9 nights. Could it be that it actually happened? That Odin, maybe even in physical form, did this, and it was the scent of the Jew tree in the height of summer that gave him this hallucinogenic property, so he could travel and he could be gifted the runes. I don't know if it's true, but it could be, and I like thinking about stuff like that. So if you like the video, if you like this theory, let me know. Take care. We just passed Yule, and it's pretty wintry around here. So learn from the old trees, learn from the evergreens, learn from the Jew tree. Doesn't matter how much winter we get, how cold it gets, how difficult it gets. Keep that sparkle in your eye, keep that shine, just like the Jew tree. Till next video. Bye bye.